Welcome back. From all of us here on the Urban Herald team, we're ready to start this deep dive. You've given us the sources, the notes, all the raw data, and our mission now is to really extract the definitive insights from what was maybe the most turbulent, exhilarating, and contradictory year in recent memory, 2025.
It really was.
And this isn't just a review, it's a comprehensive structural analysis. We're here to chart the collision.
And that collision is really the defining characteristic.
Defining characteristic, yeah.
When you look at the stack of sources we have, I mean, everything from box office reports to quantum physics breakthroughs.
Right, and political polling, tragic events.
Exactly. The core tension is just. It's unmistakable. We saw this extraordinary acceleration into the future. I mean, unprecedented AI breakthroughs, functional quantum computing, a trillion-dollar restructuring of the global economy.
But at the same time...
Yet, at the very same time, we saw this profound reversion to some deeply rooted and sometimes, frankly, dangerous human behaviors. Geopolitical upheaval, shocking political violence, and this desperate craving for nostalgic, communal pop culture moments.
Absolutely. It really felt like the future arrived while we were all, staring at our phones, trying to figure out which pair of bootcut jeans to buy and wondering if the world was ending.
It was a complete paradox.
A total paradox.
Yeah.
Technology pushed us light years ahead, but our societal operating system, it seemed to lag decades behind.
Precisely. And that sense of a hybrid existence, half digital infrastructure, half fractured human consciousness, that's the story we really need to unpack today.
Okay, let's get into it. Let's unpack this retrospective because it is massive. For this deep dive, we've broken the analysis into 4 major thematic areas. First, we are going to tackle the cultural pulse. We'll cover everything from the big screen's big return to that record-breaking Super Bowl halftime show.
Right.
Then we pivot to the technological future AI, quantum, and the absolute phenomenon that is Nvidia.
A big one.
Third, we're going to explore the evolution of lifestyle, touching on wellness, fashion, and sustainable travel. And then finally, we have to confront the most difficult segment, the global political consciousness, defined, tragically, by political violence and that profound November electoral reckoning.
It's a roadmap for understanding a truly monumental, contradictory year. So where should we start?
Let's jump right in with the culture, the stuff that provided, I think, the necessary escape and reflection for so many people.
Good place to start.
So let's start with something surprising, the resilience of cinema. 2025 was, well, it was widely anticipated to be the year that streaming just completed its dominance.
Right, that the movie theater would become this little niche luxury.
Exactly. But the data, it told us something completely different. It was a genuine watershed moment for theatrical exhibition. It proved the big screen experience holds this, irreplaceable cultural currency.
And it wasn't just about maximizing profits for the studios. It was about the communal moment, the thing that only a cinema can deliver.
I mean, the convenience of streaming is undeniable, we all know that, but it just completely fails to replicate the cultural weight of sitting in a dark, silent room with hundreds of strangers.
Sharing that ambitious, highly anticipated original narrative, that shared intake of breath. That's something technology hasn't automated yet.
And the success of the movie Sinners perfectly exemplifies this renewed hunger for originality. Yeah. We had Ryan Coogler directing, Michael B. Jordan.
Playing twin brothers.
Playing twin brothers, exactly. Facing off against vampires in this, sprawling period horror adventure film. It was the ambition of it, the original storytelling backed by real studio resources that drove both the critical acclaim and the box office.
It showed that audiences will leave their couches if you give them something truly new and large scale.
That's the key metric for the studios, isn't it? Audiences were willing to pay the premium for novelty as long as the production values justified the effort.
It was a declaration that cinema could still surprise and challenge in ways that the endless flow of streamed content, which is often optimized for, background viewing.
For having on while you're doing the laundry.
Exactly. Just struggles to match that.
We also saw critics rewarding genuine substance. You look at a film like Warfare, the military procedural about a Navy SEAL mission in Ramadi.
Not a popcorn flick at all.
No. And the critical rankings, they repeatedly emphasized that audiences valued narratives that didn't just entertain. They wanted films that actively examined the human cost of conflict, the moral ambiguities of modern warfare.
And what's fascinating there is the implicit comparison to the content glut. When your input is endless, Your criteria for what warrants a 2-hour dedicated engagement, it just rises dramatically.
Good point. Warfare delivered seriousness, and Sinners delivered spectacle, both of them acting as counter-programming to all that disposable streaming stuff.
And beyond the completely new, the power of established theatrical stars it remained immense. The Wicked saga, with the sequel, Wicked, for good, that was a cultural calendar event.
It really was. Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande reprising their roles.
As Elphaba and Glinda, the power of those performances and that deeply layered emotional narrative, it just transcended a typical franchise entry. It reminded us that certain stories, especially those rooted in music and emotion, they require the magnitude of the big screen to really land.
And speaking of raw talent on the stage, we cannot overlook Rachel Zegler's spine-tingling performance in Evita at London's Palladium Theatre.
An absolute triumph.
Yeah.
One of the major pure theatrical moments of the year.
And these stage moments, Zegler, Wicked, they remind us that while the technological future is racing forward, the cultural conversation still fundamentally revolves around exceptional, concentrated human talent.
Delivered in a live or collective format, it's the human element resisting the algorithm.
And that need for shared cultural experience, it transitioned perfectly to the sound of 2025. The music scene gave us these lightning rod moments that just cemented their place in history.
The year really crystallized early on, February 2nd at the Grammy Awards. Beyoncé's Album of the Year win for Cowboy Carter. That was so much more than an award.
It was a statement.
It was. It solidified her role as a culture-shaping force, one whose artistic influence just transcends mere commercial success. She led the night with 11 nominations.
But the real energy, the moment that fused sports, music, and consumer culture instantly, that was Kendrick Lamar.
Oh, absolutely. His dual victories record and Song of the Year were then followed by his utterly electrifying Super Bowl LIX halftime performance.
That Super Bowl, February 9th at the Caesars Superdome in New Orleans, I mean, it was historic for so many reasons. The game itself saw the Philadelphia Eagles beat the Kansas City Chiefs 40-22.
A satisfyingly high-scoring game. And Jalen Hurts set a notable Super Bowl record for rushing yards by a quarterback at 72.
But the numbers for the spectacle are just staggering. Lamar, and he was joined by special guest SCA, drew 133.5 million viewers.
That is officially the most-watched Super Bowl halftime show in history.
In history, the game itself attracted 126 million viewers across all platforms, making it the most-watched Super Bowl ever.
And then you have to add this other layer of unprecedented political theater. President Donald Trump became the first sitting president to ever attend a Super Bowl.
Right. And that decision and all the coverage around it, it just further demonstrated how our largest cultural events and our most polarized political theater have become, inextricably linked.
They're all one and the same now.
And here's where the ripple effect gets so fascinating. This shows how a single cultural moment translates directly into consumer behavior. The fashion intertwine.
You're talking about the jeans.
I am talking about the jeans. Lamar's choice of bootcut jeans for that performance, a seemingly minor detail, ignited this massive, immediate fashion trend.
It's the immediacy of cultural transmission. Social media, e-commerce, it all enables it. Music generates this intense, shared moment. And that moment translates instantly into aesthetic preference and industry trends.
People were looking up Kendrick Lamar bootcut jeans before the final whistle even blew.
Of course they were.
We also need to pause and celebrate the continuing shift toward inclusivity and authenticity that we're seeing in the music industry. Chappell Roan's recognition as Best New Artist was really significant.
It was. Her win signaled the industry's shift toward recognizing bold visibility, unapologetic queer representation.
Yeah.
And this matters because it aligns directly with the priorities of Gen Z audiences who value and prioritize that authenticity.
It's a validation, right? A validation that you don't have to water down your identity to achieve mainstream success.
Exactly. And that desire for reflection and authenticity wasn't just limited to stadium stages. The literary landscape of 2025 also served as this necessary mirror to the year's social anxieties.
You mean books like David Soleil's Flesh, and a novel?
And Yale Vander Wouden's The Safekeep. The year's most acclaimed fiction. They actively tackled contemporary issues. They wrestled with these fundamental questions of identity, belonging, and the search for solidarity in what felt like increasingly fractured times.
So the arts aren't just entertainment.
They are our societal stress test. They show us what concerns us the most.
Which brings us directly to the source of so much of that turbulence, technology, and the year it stopped being novel and became fundamental.
For a perfect transition.
Okay, let's make that transition. If culture was about the collision of old and new, technology in 2025 was about crossing a foundational threshold. I mean, we've been talking about AI for years, but this was the year it stopped being experimental and became, well, an infrastructural necessity.
That's the absolutely crucial context. The focus shifted entirely from curiosity to optimization. The corporate question moved from, can AI generate a coherent sentence, to how do we optimize our deployment across thousands of services for maximum efficiency and ROI?
So it integrated everywhere.
Healthcare, finance, creative pipelines. It became the unheralded substrate upon which all other business processes now depend.
And the pace of innovation from companies like OpenAI was, well, it was frankly dizzying. Let's just trace their evolution within these 12 months because it shows how fast the goalposts are moving.
It really illustrates the exponential trajectory of the field. So building on the foundation from late 2024, which focused on complex chain-of-thought reasoning, we saw GPT 4.5 launch in February 2025.
And its main advance was what?
Operational. It dramatically reduced hallucinations and enhanced pattern recognition, making it a reliable tool, not just a flashy one.
But the real game changer, the functional breakthrough, that came in August with GPT-5.
GPT-5 introduced something truly different. Multiple reasoning modes. They labeled them Instant, Thinking, Pro, and Auto.
So what does that actually mean, a reasoning mode?
It allowed users to modulate the system's deliberation. You could use Instant for a quick answer, or Engage Thinking or Pro modes for tasks requiring, say, simulated multi-step hypothesis testing. It effectively let the user balance speed against required depth and computational cost.
That's a huge operational change. It shifts the AI from a monolithic black box to a customizable cognitive tool.
Absolutely. And they didn't stop there. By November, GPT 5.1 added a layer of personality customization.
Oh, right, with the 8 interaction styles.
Exactly. And that fundamentally changes the human-AI interaction paradigm. It makes the systems feel tailored, almost companionable, which, as we'll discuss later, has massive psychological implications.
The real utility moment, though, the aha, that proved AI's capabilities extend beyond human intuition, that was in drug discovery.
This was a watershed moment in medical science. Researchers used AI to design entirely novel molecular compounds that significantly enhanced chemotherapy's effectiveness, specifically targeting pancreatic cancer.
Which is notoriously difficult to treat.
Notoriously, because of its resistance mechanisms.
And the implication of that discovery is enormous, far beyond just one disease.
The key here is novelty. The AI-generated compound targeted specific resistance mechanisms in tumor cells that conventional human methodologies, relying on established chemical libraries or just intuitive design, might have overlooked entirely.
So it found a solution that was possible, but just outside our current scope of understanding.
Precisely. AI's greatest utility isn't just replacement, but truly an augmentation of human discovery. It reveals blind spots we didn't even know we had.
Now, speaking of augmentation and replacement, this tech leap has huge psychological implications. Our sources repeatedly mentioned AI increasingly serving as a surrogate counselor, a confidant for mental health.
Which sounds simultaneously revolutionary and terrifying.
It does.
And it raises these profound philosophical and ethical questions that society is only just beginning to address. I mean, if an algorithm provides measurable, real relief for mental health challenges, does the source of that relief ethically or functionally matter?
That's a deep question. If human connection is increasingly precarious, is algorithmic companionship equivalent?
We are entering a domain where the boundaries between authentic support and coded response are blurring so rapidly, it's forcing us to redefine what emotional connection truly means.
And we saw similar exponential leaps in another key area, quantum computing. For years, quantum felt like a theoretical promise, something perpetually 5 years away.
Always just around the corner.
Right. But 2025 was the inflection point where it moved firmly into industry relevance.
The December announcement of Google's Willow chip was epoch-making. It featured 105 functional qubits, and it completed highly complex computational tasks in minutes that classical supercomputers would require millennia to accomplish.
And this wasn't just a bigger chip, it solved a foundational physics problem.
It did. The persistent issue of scaling. We always assumed more qubits meant exponentially more error.
Making fault-tolerant systems a pipe dream?
Right. But Willow demonstrated the opposite. Their engineering breakthrough revealed that increasing the qubit numbers reduced error rates, provided the architecture was sound. This effectively solved the critical scaling problem that had plagued the field for decades.
And it opened direct practical pathways toward building large-scale, fault-tolerant systems.
For real-world applications in chemistry, material science, and cryptography, the transition to practical application is already underway. This isn't just a lab curiosity anymore.
You look at Atom Computing's collaboration with Microsoft.
A perfect example. They produced a commercial quantum system with 24 logical qubits. The key is logical, which are far more stable. This system was tailored specifically for advanced use cases in chemistry and achieved error rates substantially lower than physical qubits,
Making it a viable tool for material simulation today.
And in the engineering world, the boson-Q-psi breakthrough in computational fluid dynamics is it's mind-boggling.
They simulated jet engine performance with just 30 logical qubits.
A task that would require 19.2 million compute cores classically. That kind of efficiency transforms aerospace and materials engineering overnight. It compresses decades of classical computation into a single minute.
But underpinning all of this massive computational growth, both in AI and quantum, is one single company that really defined the financial and technological landscape of 2025.
Oh yeah, Nvidia.
Nvidia. Their ascent in 2025 wasn't just a business success story, it was a historical economic event. It rivaled the dawn of the internet or the Industrial Revolution in its speed and scale.
I mean, in October, Nvidia became the first publicly traded company ever here to achieve a $5 trillion market capitalization.
5 trillion. The sheer scale is just difficult to grasp. How do they even justify that valuation?
It's based on immense revenue visibility. They announced orders and supply chain commitments extending through 2026, already secured for their next generation Blackwell chips. So the market isn't valuing them on current performance. It's valuing them as the singular, unavoidable bottleneck and enablement layer for the entire global economic future.
But let's challenge that number for a moment. 5 trillion. Our sources cite Harvard economist Jason Furman stating that data center investments powered by Nvidia chips account for approximately 92% of United States GDP growth in the first half of 2025.
92%.
That sounds, statistically anomalous. Does that number hold up when you filter out speculative investment or simple reselling?
That's a crucial question. And the answer is rooted in how GDP is calculated based on investment. This metric is a measure of the investment flow into the necessary infrastructure. It means that nearly all new domestic capital expenditure aimed at generating economic growth, whether it's for optimizing logistics, building new foundational models, or accelerating drug discovery.
It's all flowing through the Nvidia ecosystem.
Exactly. It positions them not just as a component supplier, but as the enabling technology, the very bedrock for the entire artificial intelligence economic transformation.
That structural reality is deeply uncomfortable, and the speed with which they did this is tied directly to CEO Jensen Huang's leadership style.
It's a study in radically flat corporate structure. Huang maintains an extremely flat organization, with roughly 60 people reporting directly to him.
60 direct reports.
Yes, and that enforced immediate accountability is essential. It enables the rapid decision-making necessary to stay ahead in a field that accelerates monthly, not yearly. There's just no room for slow consensus.
And his personal story has now become the definitive modern narrative of the American dream.
Absolutely. Tracing his path from a Taiwanese immigrant working as a dishwasher at Denny's to the architect of a $5 trillion empire, it's become cultural shorthand, a massive symbol of how technical vision and ruthless execution can reshape global commerce.
And here's where the high-flying stock charts collide violently with real human experience. The AI and unemployment paradox.
This is the complex, uncomfortable fallout of the AI boom, and it hits home for a lot of our listeners. The accelerated integration of generative AI reignited the whole debate about technology and jobs.
And our data through August 2025, it revealed some very clear stress points, particularly for workers early in their careers.
The concentration of displacement is highly specific. The unemployment rate for 20 to 30-year-old U.S. tech workers rose by nearly 3 percentage points.
Which is 4 times the increase seen across the wider economy.
4 times. These are the entry-level coding, content creation, and basic data processing jobs that were the first to be automated.
That's the learner's insight right there. The automation is hitting the entrance ramp to the professional world first. It's creating a bottleneck for the next generation.
And it gets worse when you look at the pipelines. Entry-level job adverts fell by roughly a third in the UK between November 2022 and May 2025. This hit traditional graduate schemes in professional services like consulting and finance particularly hard.
Why hire 10 analysts to sift through data when one prompt engineer and GPT-5 can do the task faster?
That's the logic. And we also saw mass layoffs specifically attributed to this AI restructuring. Nearly 78,000 tech jobs were directly attributed to AI-related restructuring in the first half of 2025 alone.
That speed just highlights the rapid corporate redeployment of labor. It's not a slow bleed, it's an immediate strategic amputation.
But here's the paradox.
Mm.
This displacement didn't translate into dramatically higher national unemployment figures overall, so why the discrepancy?
Because of powerful offsetting forces, new job creation in new sectors, demographic changes, and sectoral shifts absorbed some of that displaced labor. But the clear paradox lies within the tech sector itself.
Right. Companies like Microsoft and Amazon announced thousands of cuts as they refocused on AI, even while they were aggressively recruiting for entirely new, high-skill, highly paid roles.
So they're firing data analysts and they're hiring what?
Prompt engineers, machine learning scientists, AI ethics specialists, data infrastructure architects. It's not just displacement, it's a high-speed redistribution of labor demand. The new reality is clear. You're either in the high-skill AI enablement space building the tools, or you're in a high-risk automation zone.
The middle ground is just evaporating.
It's evaporating quickly.
And that complexity perfectly sets up how we as individuals try to deal with this unrelenting acceleration in our daily lives.
Right, in how we live.
So 2025 was the year we fundamentally recalibrated our lifestyle priorities. Faced with these existential threats in geopolitics and economic upheaval driven by AI, we kind of stopped focusing on fighting the inevitable decline and started optimizing the present through science.
The wellness industry saw a crucial philosophical shift. We formally abandoned the decades-long defensive anti-aging narrative.
Which always felt like chasing a mirage.
Right, and we wholeheartedly embraced longevity science and biohacking. Health became defined as proactive, active optimization, focusing on maximizing health span, not just lifespan.
And once again, technology was the engine driving this shift toward extreme personalization.
Precisely. AI is now analyzing individual genetic profiles, microbiome composition, and real-time biometric data to generate these bespoke, highly granular nutrition and fitness plans.
Things that were impossible to create at scale before.
Exactly. Apps like Runna and Coupa, not just standard tracking apps, are delivering AI-powered coaching that actually adapts workout intensity based on your recovery status, your sleep patterns, your injury history.
And that market is just exploding.
It is. The global AI fitness market is projected to exceed $35.6 billion by 2030, which confirms this personalization trend is more than a fad. It's the future of health optimization.
Okay, let's talk about the crucial detail that emerged this year, one that should matter to every single person listening. Muscle longevity. This isn't just about looking good. It's a profound metabolic necessity.
Our sources emphasize this point so strongly, grounding the fitness trend in sobering biological reality. New data reveals the timeline for sarcopenia age-related muscle loss. It begins at about 3 to 8% per decade, starting around age 30.
And then it accelerates dramatically to 15% per decade after age 60.
You are actively losing your anti-aging engine every year.
So why does skeletal muscle matter so much to overall longevity, beyond just strength and mobility?
Because muscle tissue is now understood as a vital endocrine organ, not just a mover. It produces these specific hormone-like substances called myokines. When you exercise, these myokines are released into your bloodstream, and they actively combat chronic inflammation throughout your body.
So your muscles aren't just for lifting weights, they're an active pharmacy producing these anti-inflammatory agents.
Exactly. And furthermore, they support cognitive function through increased production of BDNF, which is vital for brain health and memory. They even demonstrate anti-cancer properties through immune system activation. Skeletal muscle health is now considered the single best predictor of your health span.
It's the metric you should be paying the most attention to.
Absolutely. Therefore, the optimal approach to longevity is multimodal training, a combination of resistance training, which provides the necessary stimulus aerobic exercise for cardiovascular health, and balance work for fall prevention.
And research showed that home-based resistance training is an effective and accessible strategy.
It is. This science has moved firmly into clinical consideration. And beyond fitness, we saw previously niche practices move into the mainstream for internal regulation.
Things like cycle syncing for women's training.
And vagus nerve activation techniques for stress management. This marks a shift toward prioritizing our internal regulatory systems, recognizing that optimization is psychological and hormonal as much as it is physical.
Now, on to fashion, which also fractured dramatically this year in response to all this societal tension.
The prevailing aesthetic of the prior year, quiet luxury, just completely faded. It felt too austere, too restrictive for 2025.
So it was replaced by what industry observers called a return to unrestrained expression.
There was no single trend, but a plurality. Maximalism, bohemian flourishes, contemporary academia, nomadic inspiration, all of it coexisting. It was a permission structure for personal style in a chaotic world.
And what were the key aesthetic components we saw surge as people rejected that austerity?
The defiant resurgence of faux fur and leopard print, a clear, maybe slightly humorous, antidote to years of neutral palettes.
Color palettes also shifted dramatically toward richness and warmth.
We saw chocolate brown, deep teal blue, and rich burgundy dominating collections. And we also saw the return of lace and ladylike silhouettes, pencil skirts, draped wool coats, suggesting femininity was being reclaimed as a choice of self-expression.
And most provocatively, the dramatic return of naked dressing.
But this wasn't the prohibitive, impossible haute couture nudity. It appeared in accessible, even office-appropriate interpretations. The source material frames this evolution not as gratuitous, but as a mature, post-#MeToo assertion that bodies need not be hidden.
That one's sexuality can be acknowledged without dominating professional or public contexts.
It reflects a slow societal shift toward embodiment and comfort with the self.
Finally, we saw prep aesthetics reimagined.
The classic materials, corduroy, blazers, polos, they all reappeared, but through heavy layering and fresh, unexpected color combinations, often drawing inspiration from Miu Miu and heritage brands.
Suggesting that classic structure could still feel current and rebellious if it was executed thoughtfully. This plurality, it also extended to how we choose to spend our money and time, especially in travel.
The travel industry experienced a profound pivot towards sustainability that moved beyond just carbon offsetting. We saw the true rise of regenerative tourism,
which is defined as approaches that actively improve local environments and communities, not just minimizing damage.
Right. And Costa Rica and Iceland continue to be pioneers here. But who emerged as the rising stars in this sector?
Portugal, with regenerative hikes in the Algarve and Azores, attracted travelers seeking active engagement with the environment rather than passive consumption.
Slovenia's ecotourism model focused heavily on preserving traditional crafts. Visitors could participate in beekeeping workshops, learn pottery, ensuring local communities directly benefited from cultural immersion.
This sounds like a perfect response to the artificiality of the AI age-seeking, genuine, tangible connection.
Absolutely. However, travel wasn't without its challenges, particularly in major urban hubs.
Unfortunately, we saw a surge in opportunistic crime.
Pickpocketing incidents rose significantly in 2025 in major European cities. Rome saw a 12% increase near Termini Station, and Paris an 8% rise near the Eiffel Tower and on crowded metro lines.
But this shift toward genuine engagement also drove a psychological leaning toward slow travel.
A definite preference for extended stays in singular locations rather than rushed, multi-city circuit tourism. And this is beneficial because it disperses tourist wealth across local economies and offers travelers a genuine, deeper cultural immersion.
Moving them beyond the curated tourist traps.
Exactly.
This brings us to the most sobering section of the retrospective. 2025 was marked by profound geopolitical volatility globally, but it was tragically defined by an unprecedented wave of political violence within the United States.
We have to frame this as a year when the intense rhetoric that has defined U.S. politics for a decade finally crossed a threshold and became physical action. The rhetoric shifted from verbal sparring to active, premeditated harm.
And the most shocking incident, the one that broke through the cycle of numbness, was the September 10th assassination of conservative political activist Charlie Kirk.
Kirk, who was 31, the founder of Turning Point USA, was fatally shot while speaking at an outdoor rally at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. He was addressing a crowd of about 3,000 attendees when the attack occurred.
The details of the assassination paint a really disturbing picture of premeditated, politically motivated violence.
He was shot once in the neck by a single bullet fired from a gunman positioned on a building roof, approximately 142 yards away. The precision and distance just underscore the cold planning behind the act.
The perpetrator, Tyler James Robinson, surrendered the following day.
Robinson, 22, from Washington, Utah, was charged with aggravated murder. Prosecutors immediately announced they would seek the death penalty, and the evidence was chilling. DNA on the bolt-action rifle, and investigators found cartridges engraved with phrases from internet memes and video games.
Suggesting a deep, online-fueled radicalization.
Exactly. And the alleged confession speaks volumes about the rhetorical environment. His alleged confession to his romantic partner was blunt. "I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out."
And that statement became instantly politicized, framing the violence as an inevitable consequence of political speech.
And this wasn't an isolated event. It was the culmination of a broader, tragic wave of political violence that characterized the year.
It was a pattern of alarming attacks that just eroded public trust and safety. We saw the June shooting of 2 Democratic Minnesota legislators, the May killing of 2 Israeli embassy staffers in D.C.,
the April arson attack on Governor Josh Shapiro's residence in Pennsylvania. Even before Kirk, we had the highly publicized December 2024 killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
And we also saw the horrific August 27th church shooting in Minneapolis.
Yes, where a transgender individual killed 2 children and wounded 21 others just 2 weeks prior to Kirk's assassination. The frequency and the sheer ideological diversity of these incidents, it reflects a profound breakdown in the shared norms of civil discourse.
The aftermath and the resulting public debate about the limits of free speech and acceptable rhetoric were almost as turbulent as the event itself.
There was immediate corporate and political pressure. Jimmy Kimmel faced a brief suspension from ABC after criticizing how MAGA figures were strategically spinning Kirk's murder for political gain.
And Vice President J.D. Vance urged listeners of Kirk's podcast to call their employer if they saw anyone celebrating the assassination, putting direct social pressure on private citizens.
And Attorney General Pam Bondi's initial statements created confusion. She initially suggested the government would absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, before needing to rapidly clarify that the focus was solely on unprotected threats of violence.
The event just dramatically intensified the national conversation around where charged political rhetoric ends and actionable incitement begins.
But the legacy of Charlie Kirk focused on the organization he founded, which is now led by his widow.
Erica Kirk assumed leadership of Turning Point USA, and at a memorial service that generated immense media attention, she offered this memorable public forgiveness of the alleged killer.
She declared, "His passion was my passion, and now his mission is my mission." The organization then transformed its massive America Fest 2025 conference in Phoenix into an extended tribute to his legacy, galvanizing the conservative movement.
And what's truly revealing about the state of our political consciousness is that even in the face of verifiable tragedy, the polarization fostered instant conspiracy theories.
Despite the official investigation pointing definitively to Robinson as the lone gunman, deep state and multinational conspiracy theories immediately emerged and gained traction online.
Conservative commentator Candace Owens, for example, intensified claims about potential Egyptian government involvement, citing anonymous sources.
It just confirms how mistrust in core public institutions has accelerated to the point where any major political event is instantly reframed through a polarized lens of suspicion, regardless of the evidence.
So against this backdrop of violence and suspicion, we saw the political system react at the ballot box. Trump's second term, which began in January, set a really unpredictable transactional tone with the America First approach.
His economic policy defined the year early on. He prioritized bilateral negotiations and deployed tariffs as a primary economic tool. This led to market volatility, and while it achieved some geopolitical objectives, it also introduced significant inflation impacts for American consumers.
Which became a key electoral issue. And that economic uncertainty and the ensuing political gridlock, it culminated in a government shutdown later in the year.
The shutdown lasted through October and November, and it was coupled with sweeping, targeted layoffs of the federal workforce. This created widespread economic anxiety and resentment, which played directly into the November elections. By late November, our internal polling showed significant public discontent.
60% of North Carolina voters, for example, disapproved of Trump's handling of inflation.
And so, the November 2025 elections provided the first major electoral test of this new political era, and the results were stunning. They delivered what many analysts universally called a significant rebuke to the administration.
The Democrats achieved a comprehensive sweep of major gubernatorial and statewide races across Virginia and New Jersey, and a progressive victory in New York City.
And, crucially, California voters approved a mechanism to redraw congressional maps in their favor for 2026. This was widely interpreted as the public voicing its disapproval of the volatility and gridlock.
Let's focus on Virginia, because that sweep was clean and consequential.
Democrat Abigail Spanberger won the governor's race, making history as the state's first female governor. And the exit polls showed a defining statistic. 56% of Virginia voters actively disapproved of Trump.
Signaling the victory was as much a rejection of the national mood as an endorsement of Spanberger, and her running mate also achieved a significant historical milestone.
Ghazala Hashmi became the first Muslim woman elected to statewide office in Virginia as lieutenant governor. The campaign successfully pivoted the conversation away from national polarization and focused squarely on affordability and economic stability.
New Jersey followed a similar pattern.
Democratic U.S. Representative Mikey Sherrill won the gubernatorial race against the Trump-endorsed Republican Jack Ciattarelli. And again, the exit polls showed the prevailing mood. 55% of New Jersey voters disapproved of Trump.
But the most dramatic win, and perhaps the largest statement from the progressive wing, was the mayoral race in New York City.
The victory of Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani was a major feat. At just 34, he became the city's first Muslim mayor, the first of South Asian descent elected, and the first person born in Africa to lead NYC. He defeated Andrew Cuomo and Curtis Sliwa with over 1 million votes.
And the exit polls in New York were almost a statistical aberration for the president.
A remarkable 69% of New York City voters explicitly disapproved of Trump. Mamdani's victory speech captured the confrontational, resistant mood of the city. He didn't offer reconciliation. He opened with a quote from socialist presidential candidate Eugene Debs.
And he had a direct, televised message for the president that became instantly iconic.
He declared that the way to terrify a despot is to dismantle the conditions that allowed him to accumulate power, concluding with a memorable, direct challenge. Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up.
That quote really defined the spirit of Democratic resistance in 2025. We also saw California voters approve Proposition 50, a proactive measure that changes the future electoral landscape.
Approved with a significant 63.8% support, Proposition 50 allows the redrawing of congressional district maps, specifically to favor Democrats in 5 GOP-held districts for the 2026 midterms.
And this was explicitly framed by Governor Gavin Newsom as a direct electoral response to Texas's mid-cycle redistricting enacted by Republicans earlier in the year.
It signifies that political warfare is now being waged through institutional mechanisms like redistricting, not just through campaigning. And this political volatility wasn't confined to the U.S. It was a global condition.
Right. The COFACE Political Risk Index, a crucial measure of global stability, reached a record high of 41.1% in 2025.
A figure that exceeded even the peak recorded during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. This reflects an unprecedented global political volatility, signaling that deep, pervasive uncertainty is now the permanent state of international relations.
Okay, let's turn now to finance, which mirrored the year's volatility, especially in the world of decentralized digital assets. Cryptocurrency had a dramatic roller coaster arc in 2025, starting with just monumental hope.
The year started with extraordinary, almost euphoric optimism. Spot Bitcoin ETFs had achieved regulatory approval, opening crypto to traditional institutional investment pipelines for the first time.
Plus, the election of a pro-cryptocurrency President Trump generated significant bullish sentiment.
It pushed Bitcoin toward unprecedented heights. By early October, Bitcoin surpassed the $126,000 mark for the first time, seemingly validating the most optimistic predictions.
That the asset class had finally matured into a global store of value.
Right. But the final quarter showed its profound vulnerability to global macro conditions.
Trump's tariff announcements, coupled with surprisingly hawkish signals from the Fed.
Following September's CPI data, which indicated persistent inflation, that pressured Bitcoin downward significantly. By December, it was trading around $89,000, a sharp decline of about 30% from its peak in just 2 months.
And analysts estimated a significant 15% probability of it closing below $80,000 by year-end.
This volatility revealed an uncomfortable structural truth about its maturation into an institutional asset.
It confirmed that Bitcoin's correlation with equity markets had strengthened substantially. This critically contradicted its original thesis as an uncorrelated defensive inflation hedge.
The maturation of Bitcoin into a widely held institutional asset carried a hidden cost. Increased exposure to the same macroeconomic conditions that govern traditional risky assets. The conversation formally shifted from, will crypto replace traditional finance, to how will crypto integrate into regulated financial infrastructure?
And while the big players stabilized and corrected, smaller cryptocurrencies continued their wild ride, facilitating some interesting wealth transfers.
We saw significant wealth transfer through systems like Grass's airdrop, which distributed $70 million worth of assets to nearly 3 million users, often bypassing traditional banking and regulatory structures. And projects like Chainlink maintain their relevance due to their core utility as infrastructure.
Proving the separation between utility and speculation.
Exactly. And outside of digital assets, we saw a continued psychological flight to alternative investments that valued tangibility over digital abstraction.
Luxury collectibles became serious, recognized investment vehicles.
Hermes Birkin handbags and Rolex Daytona watches demonstrated verifiable appreciation exceeding traditional market returns. This attracted investors who clearly valued objects they could possess, touch, and experience.
In a world of digital volatility, people were psychologically leaning toward assets that exist physically.
Right. And finally, we saw the entrepreneurial spirit navigating major headwinds. Small businesses faced significant challenges: rising interest rates, compressed consumer spending, and persistent labor shortages.
Yet the continued steady success of chains like Five Guys proved that a relentless, unwavering focus on quality and customer experience can still overcome competitive disadvantages, even in saturated markets.
And while the subscription economy continued its broad expansion, consumers started questioning the perpetual payments. We're seeing a consumer reckoning where people are increasingly asking whether subscription lock-in represents genuine value or just corporate extraction.
So business models relying purely on that psychological lock-in will likely need to transform rapidly to remain viable.
As consumers prioritize tangible value over monthly convenience. Absolutely.
So if we synthesize this entire retrospective, from the $5 trillion Nvidia valuation driving 92% of new investment to the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk, from the most watched Super Bowl ever to the breakthrough in fault-tolerant quantum chips, what is the year's defining characteristic?
It's acceleration and deep bifurcation. We saw technology move at light speed, but the human craving for authentic, communal, unoptimized experience, the cinema, the record-breaking Super Bowl, the pursuit of slow travel, it was immense.
We saw AI become global infrastructure while political norms fractured via violence and democratic upheaval.
The paradoxes are everywhere we look in the data.
The collision was just relentless. Quantum computers advanced while we argued about bootcut jeans. Naked dressing walked the runway alongside the return of structured tailoring. We mourned political violence while celebrating stunning democratic victories.
The greatest lesson of 2025, and what we have to take forward, is that the future won't be a clean, science fiction-esque separation between technology and nature, authentic and artificial. We are entering a complex hybrid existence where the digital and the deeply human are inextricably linked.
The year's ultimate significance will be realized as we track how these discrete, dramatic tremors generate consequences across subsequent years.
We have to gain wisdom about what to preserve, what to transform, and what we must release entirely.
That's the essence of the 2025 retrospective we've assembled for you. It was a year that tested our societal limits and redefined our trajectory toward a deeply digital yet fiercely tribal future. We've seen acceleration toward the artificial, paired with a profound, sometimes violent need for the authentic. So here's the thought we want to leave you with, the listener, as you mull over these profound shifts. Given the extreme acceleration of AI and technology alongside the profound political volatility and violence we witnessed, what essential human quality or tradition, previously taken for granted, did 2025 reveal we must actively preserve to navigate this increasingly complex hybrid world?
Think about that carefully. Is it empathy? Is it the ritual of shared experience? What is the fundamental human anchor that technology cannot replicate and that political polarization cannot fully fracture? It's a question that will define the next decade.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with the Urban Herald team. We'll see you next time.